Hello, I'm Ronald, and thank you for joining me. We're going to learn some Spanish. Today, we're going to be doing um, conjugating verbs in the present tense, and let's get started. So, verbs in the present tense, or in Spanish, as we say, verbos en el tiempo presente en el modo indicativo. And this is our first video. All right, so before we get started, we just have a few things to define because we're going to start all the way at the beginning. So, first things first, we have an infinitive, which is going to be like the main form of a verb in Spanish, which is the unconjugated form, so it doesn't have any subject. And these forms of the verbs end in AR, ER, or IR. That's how we differentiate the three kinds of verbs in Spanish. Um, and those are distinguished by their infinitive ending. And um, I'm sure most of you don't know what an infinitive is. So here's some examples in English. You have like to eat, to speak, to read, to draw. Um, Basically a verb, it's like neutral. So it's like to something. Notice how there's not like I eat or I drink or anything like that. It's just to because it's neutral. And in Spanish, that would be something like bailar, ensayar, probar, terminar. You get it. So it has this AR ending, which indicates the indicative form, or not the indicative, which indicates the infinitive form in Spanish. That's one type, that's the AR kind. And then we have ER verbs, beber, proteger, deber, comer, saber, poder. Um, Again, it means to and then something. So like beber means to drink, proteger, to protect. And then the last kind is our verbs. So we have servir, vivir, salir, decir, pedir, dormir. Again, servir to serve, vivir to live. You get the idea. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at our example in English on like what conjugating a verb means. So when we talk about conjugating, we're really talking about like changing the verb and giving it a subject. So like instead of saying to eat, we're going to say I eat or you eat. Um like I walk to school, you drive to the store, he eats breakfast, I talk in class, that kind of thing. Just like regular English stuff. So again, instead of saying the infinitive form, which is neutral, no subject, to eat, to sleep, we're now going to say I eat, I sleep, you eat, you know, which is the conjugated form. And to do that in English, we simply just put I, you, our pronoun, we put that in front of the verb. But in Spanish, it's a little different, and you'll see. So for Spanish, there's a couple of steps here. You just take off the infinitive ending, which is the AR, the ER, the IR, and then you're going to attach on these other endings. And there's different, whoops, there's different ones for each kind of verb, and depending on the subject that you're using. So you have I, you, he, she, we, you, plural. And these are their equivalents in Spanish. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ustedes. And then for all AR verbs, all regular AR verbs, like hablar, which means to speak, the conjugations are going to be as follows. Hablo, yo hablo, tú hablas, él habla, nosotros hablamos, vosotros habláis, y ustedes, or ellos, hablan. And then for comer, como, comes, come, comemos, comes, comen, vivir, vivo, vives, vive, vivimos, vivís, viven. So just look at these endings here. They're bolded and in color. Yo form in Spanish for all these verbs, it's in an O. And then notice how for the AR, it's AS for two, ER and IR, both ES. The same thing for el hecho usted. And then notice here how we have for the nosotros form, for the IR verb, we have emos here instead of amos. So that's for the IR verb. And then the same thing for the vosotros, PVs instead of comes. So it differs there. And then it's the same for the IR as the ER for the last conjugation. Those were all the regular verbs. And now here are some other kinds of verbs. These are the stem changing verbs. So these ones, they kind of they require like an extra step. So these ones they change their spelling within the verb a little bit. There's like three main kinds. The E in the verb changes to an IE, the O to a UE, and the E to an I. So here's some examples like querer. When you conjugate it, it's quiere. The E becomes an IE. Poder. O becomes an OE. Reír. E becomes an I. And these verbs, they're going to change like that. This letter will change to that letter. For all of the subject forms except for nosotros and vosotros. Okay, so here's an example of that. We have e to I, e, o to u, e to I. Notice endings completely the same as the regular verbs for all of them, except notice how this spelling changes. So the O goes to a UE, the E to an E, and the E to an I for this verb. For these forms, all of them except nosotros and vosotros, these kinds of verbs, there's a couple of them. You got to memorize them, but they basically all have the same pattern for the present tense. And then lastly, there's some irregular verbs. There's this ear, or there's ser, tener, estar, and ear. These guys are irregular. So yeah, these guys have none of the previous patterns. And then one little extra thing, tener is stem changing. So let's look at these conjugations. So for yo, for ser, it's soy, to is eres, el hecho usted is es, somos, sois, and son. So that's like saying yo soy is I am, to eres, you are, él es, he is. And then for tener, this verb means to have. And then this over here for the yo conjugation, it ends in go. So it's tengo, not teno, like how you would have previously thought for if it was like more regular. And we have stem changes. Notice this stem change is not in the yo form. It's only in these forms over here. Still not in the nosotros or vosotros. Estar also means to be. It differs from ser a little bit, but we'll get into that in the next video. All you need to know now is these conjugations. Estoy, tú estás, él está, ella está. Nosotros estamos, vosotros estáis, and ustedes, ellos están. Ir to go, voy, yo voy, tú vas, él va, ella va, usted va, nosotros vamos, vosotros vais y ellos, ellas, ustedes van. And yep, that's all of our verbs in the present tense. We did the regular verbs, we did the stem changing verbs, and then we did a couple of irregular verbs. So I hope you found that helpful. And please check out some of our other videos if you thought this was useful. And thank you.